Have you ever trusted someone completely, only to find your entire life collapsing overnight? Maria Thompson thought she had it all: a successful career, a perfect marriage, and the admiration of everyone around her. But beneath the polished facade, her seemingly loving husband and manipulative mother-in-law quietly tore her world apart. When Maria faced severe pregnancy complications, instead of support, she received betrayal. Her husband drained their savings for a lavish family wedding, leaving her nearly blind and alone at the hospital. This is Maria's inspiring true story of overcoming deep emotional trauma, reclaiming her dignity, and finding true strength after devastating family betrayal. If you've ever dealt with toxic relationships or emotional manipulation, this powerful story of survival and renewal will resonate deeply. Watch now and see how Maria courageously rebuilt her life from the ashes of heartbreak. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more compelling real-life stories that empower and inspire. I used to believe I had everything until I realized everything I had was built on sand. The morning sunlight spilled softly through the glass walls of my corner office, reflecting off the sleek marble surface of my desk. The awards and framed magazine covers neatly arranged on the wall behind me weren't just decoration. They were silent testimonies of my hard-earned victories. At 32, I was Maria Thompson, director of marketing at one of the city's top firms, sharp, poised, and respected. On paper, my life read like the dream I had meticulously planned since college: an influential position, financial independence, and a marriage everyone envied. Ethan, my husband, was charming and successful, a partner who always seemed supportive. He was the kind of man who'd bring home flowers without a special occasion, smiling warmly as if he'd just stepped from the pages of a romance novel. Together, we appeared unstoppable, yet beneath that polished exterior, something subtly unsettling lingered. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, had perfected the art of smiling gently while slipping daggers into her words. I recall one evening at her house vividly: the soft chime of expensive silverware against fine china, her graceful gestures as she leaned toward me, whispering, "It's remarkable how effortlessly you balance career and family, Maria. Of course, it's easier when one doesn't have children yet." Her words hung delicately in the air, cloaked in politeness but sharp enough to sting. I looked at Ethan instinctively, hoping for reassurance, but he was absorbed in conversation, leaving me to silently digest the implication alone. That morning, in my sunlit office, as I browsed through emails, Eleanor's name appeared again. No greeting, no pleasantries, just a link to an article boldly titled, "Can Ambitious Women Truly Have It All?" The quiet judgment embedded in that single sentence made my chest tighten slightly. I leaned back, taking a deep breath, suddenly conscious of the carefully arranged image around me: the polished surfaces, the meticulously organized planner, the smiling photo of Ethan and me from our anniversary trip. In that brief moment, I felt an uneasy shift beneath my feet, as though the flawless life I'd built might not be as stable as I'd always believed. Ethan had a gift for making even ordinary moments feel extraordinary. Our first year of marriage played out like scenes from a film: perfectly edited highlights filled with laughter, love, and effortless joy. Weekend escapes to secluded cabins, candlelit dinners, and slow, lazy mornings in bed, reading books side by side, were our norm. I remember vividly one Friday night when I had just secured a pivotal client deal at work. Ethan insisted we celebrate at our favorite downtown restaurant. When I arrived, he was waiting by our usual table, holding a single rose, his smile warm and irresistible. "You're incredible," he whispered, pulling out my chair. "You make success look easy." His words always found a direct route to my heart, making me feel deeply seen and genuinely appreciated. As we clinked glasses in celebration, I felt enveloped in a warmth that seemed impossible to fade. At that moment, it felt as though the happiness we'd found together was solid, unquestionable. Ethan was equally adept at charming my professional circle and effortlessly integrated into my personal world. At company events, colleagues frequently joked that he was the perfect spouse, always engaged, interested, and genuinely attentive. My parents quickly fell under his charm, especially my father, who enjoyed sharing stories of his academic life while Ethan listened attentively, his eyes never leaving my father's face. On weekends, we'd often gather at my parents' modest suburban home, the dining table alive with laughter and good-natured teasing. Ethan would effortlessly slip into conversations, his charm never forced, his interest always genuine. Yet, as I grew closer to Ethan's family, subtle things began to surface, things I tried to brush aside. Ethan's mother, Eleanor, was an elegant woman, beautiful, poised, and impeccably polite. On our visits to the family's luxurious lakefront home, she greeted me with warmth, her voice soothing and welcoming. "Maria," she would say, gently clasping my hand, "you've been such a blessing to Ethan. He's never seemed happier." Her compliments always felt sincere at first glance, yet they carried an undercurrent, something quietly evaluating beneath the surface. One particular afternoon remains vivid in my memory. We'd gathered at Eleanor's request, seated on the terrace overlooking a serene lake. The sun painted everything in gold, laughter floating around us effortlessly. Mid-conversation, Eleanor turned toward me, smiling sweetly yet subtly, probing. "You truly are extraordinary, Maria, managing such a demanding career and still taking care of Ethan so beautifully. Though I suppose," she added thoughtfully, sipping her tea with perfect grace, "it might become more challenging once children come along, wouldn't it?" The table grew quiet for a brief moment. Ethan's brother chuckled softly, breaking the silence, and Ethan himself smiled, placing a gentle hand on my knee, a reassuring gesture, though he said nothing to challenge his mother's statement. My cheeks flushed slightly, the warmth of embarrassment mingling with confusion. But Eleanor quickly moved on, redirecting the conversation to lighter topics, as if her words had been a casual observation rather than a subtle warning. I glanced at Ethan, searching his face for something more, some reassurance. His expression was calm, composed, reflecting nothing of my sudden unease. I brushed the moment aside, determined to believe Eleanor's intentions were nothing but good, ignoring the faint whisper of discomfort. That night, as we drove home under a starlit sky, Ethan squeezed my hand gently. "My family loves you, Maria," he murmured reassuringly, his voice soft and soothing. "Especially Mom. She's never connected so quickly with anyone I've brought home." I leaned back in the seat, watching the city lights blur past, letting myself believe again in the perfect picture we'd built. Yet even as I accepted his comforting words, somewhere deep inside me, a small seed of doubt had quietly taken root, unnoticed yet steadily growing beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect life. After Eleanor's gentle but pointed comments on that sunny afternoon, I started noticing more subtle signals scattered throughout our interactions. Small moments that lingered uncomfortably long after everyone else had moved on. They crept quietly into my thoughts, leaving me uncertain about their true meaning. On weekends, Ethan and I regularly visited his parents' lake house, a tradition I had initially loved. Yet, increasingly, I felt tension brewing beneath the polished surface of these family gatherings. It often began innocently, usually as compliments that somehow morphed into veiled criticisms, delicate as silk, sharp as glass. One Sunday, brunch still stands out vividly. Sunlight flooded the elegant dining room, glittering off crystal chandeliers and fine porcelain plates. We were laughing, comfortably chatting over freshly baked pastries, when Eleanor leaned slightly toward me, her voice velvety and soft, her smile warm yet disconcertingly calculated. "Maria, your home is always so perfectly organized," she began gently, her gaze carefully assessing my reaction. "I must admit, I'm quite impressed. But do you think you might intimidate Ethan sometimes? He always preferred a more relaxed environment growing up, you see." A chill ran down my spine. but I masked it quickly with a polite smile, nodding as though grateful for her thoughtful advice. Ethan, seated beside me, chuckled lightly, oblivious or perhaps choosing to remain unaware of the implication behind his mother's remark. "Mom, you worry too much," he replied, casually sipping his coffee. But instead of addressing the subtle jab at my expense, he merely redirected the conversation toward neutral ground. His passive neutrality left a hollow feeling in my chest, though I hid it well. On another occasion, Eleanor gifted me a cookbook titled Meals for Busy Wives. She handed it to me gracefully, wrapped in elegant paper, tied with a silken ribbon. Her smile was flawlessly gentle. "I thought of you immediately when I saw this, dear," she said warmly. "Perhaps it'll help you manage your time more efficiently, especially when you decide to slow down and have a family." The room was filled with approving murmurs. My fingers tightened slightly around the book, embarrassment heating my cheeks. Ethan, sitting beside me on the sofa, placed a reassuring hand on my knee but remained silent again. The quiet acceptance in his eyes, the way he avoided challenging Eleanor's subtle criticism, made my heart tighten. As weeks passed, those tiny, seemingly insignificant comments multiplied. Eleanor never raised her voice. She never openly criticized, yet her whispers, delivered gently over tea or during casual strolls in the garden, carried hidden meanings that gnawed at my confidence. "You know, dear," she'd say with a sympathetic tilt of her head, "not everyone is built for motherhood. It's truly admirable how you've embraced your career instead. It suits you beautifully." Her words were wrapped carefully, always impeccable, always laced with warmth that contradicted the bite beneath. My attempts to dismiss these comments grew increasingly strained. They became like tiny stones in my shoes, irritating, impossible to ignore. One evening, I finally mustered the courage to mention it gently to Ethan as we drove home from his parents' house, my voice carefully neutral, hiding the turmoil underneath. "Ethan, have you ever noticed how your mother talks to me sometimes?" I asked softly, eyes fixed forward, pretending to study the blurred lines of streetlights passing by. He paused briefly, seeming genuinely surprised. "What do you mean? Mom adores you, Maria. She says nothing but wonderful things about you." "Maybe I'm imagining it," I murmured, immediately backing down, afraid of sounding paranoid. Ethan squeezed my hand reassuringly, turning back to the road. His gesture should have comforted me, but instead, it only deepened the unease I couldn't shake. I fell silent, inwardly questioning my sanity. Perhaps Ethan was right. Perhaps I was overly sensitive, seeing shadows where there was nothing but genuine kindness. Yet that night, as I lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, Eleanor's words replayed endlessly in my mind, each one a soft whisper chipping steadily away at my carefully constructed confidence. In the months that followed, Ethan's silence became louder, more pronounced. Though our life appeared unchanged to everyone else, internally, I began sensing small fractures widening beneath the polished veneer of our marriage. I vividly recall one evening after returning home from yet another dinner at Eleanor's house. The car ride had been silent, heavy with the tension of unspoken words. Ethan parked in our driveway but made no immediate move to get out. Instead, he simply sat there, staring straight ahead, his knuckles lightly gripping the steering wheel. "Ethan?" My voice was tentative, careful. He exhaled slowly, eyes still fixed forward. "Maria, I wish you'd try harder with Mom. She really means well. Maybe you're just misunderstanding her." His words felt like ice sliding down my spine. I swallowed hard, choosing my response carefully. "I am trying. I always have. But sometimes the things she says, they hurt." He turned sharply toward me, confusion and frustration evident in his eyes. "What does she say that's so terrible? She's complimenting you, encouraging you." I stared at him in disbelief, then quickly glanced away, biting my lip to control the trembling. "It's more complicated than that, Ethan. Sometimes it feels like I'm never good enough for her, no matter how hard I try." He sighed heavily, shaking his head. Maria, maybe you're overthinking it. Mom just has high standards. She raised us with those standards. It doesn't mean she dislikes you. I wanted to argue, to explain again how her subtle remarks chipped away at my confidence, but his rigid expression stopped me. The firmness of his voice told me there was no room left for discussion, so I let the silence settle back between us, heavy and suffocating. From that night onward, I found myself hesitant to share my feelings with Ethan. Each time I tried, his response was the same dismissive, gently patronizing, and always supportive of his mother. Gradually, conversations dwindled into polite exchanges about work, errands, and daily routines. Any topic beyond surface level felt dangerous, fraught with unspoken disagreements that neither of us seemed willing or able to address. Yet, despite the growing emotional distance, Ethan continued to project the image of a devoted husband in public. At parties or family gatherings, he held my hand lovingly, smiled warmly, and charmed everyone around us effortlessly. But behind closed doors, his affectionate gestures became increasingly rare, replaced instead by quiet detachment. One late night, as we lay side by side in our bedroom, unable to sleep, I summoned the courage once more. Ethan, I whispered carefully into the darkness, sometimes I feel incredibly alone, even when you're right here next to me. He shifted beside me, turning to face away slightly. Maria, you're not alone. You're just tired. Work's stressing you out too much. His dismissal was gentle, but it stung deeply. I turned onto my side, facing the opposite wall, tears silently tracing down my cheeks. Ethan either didn't notice or chose not to. His breathing soon steadied into sleep, leaving me wide awake with nothing but my troubled thoughts for company. I began to withdraw, retreating into myself, trying to bury the hurt beneath a veneer of professional composure. At work, my productivity soared, a desperate attempt to reclaim control and validation elsewhere. Yet at home, each interaction felt colder, each silence heavier, widening the invisible gap between Ethan and me. Occasionally, Eleanor's comments still drifted back, echoing softly in the quiet moments. Ethan always liked things simpler, or perhaps you should slow down, dear, men feel neglected when wives are too ambitious. Her gentle insinuations settled beneath my skin, embedding deeper each time Ethan remained silent. One evening, after a particularly draining week, I arrived home late to find Ethan asleep on the sofa, the television softly illuminating his peaceful face. I hesitated briefly, studying his familiar features, once a source of comfort. Now, looking at him, I felt a strange sadness, a quiet resignation. I gently draped a blanket over his sleeping form, watching him for a moment longer before turning away, wondering how we'd come to occupy the same home yet inhabit entirely separate worlds. In that instant, I understood clearly, Ethan's silence was not merely avoidance. It was a choice, a deliberate decision to prioritize comfort over confrontation, his mother's approval over my emotional well-being. Recognizing that reality filled me with profound sadness and quiet acceptance, setting the stage for the painful realization that perhaps this carefully constructed world of ours was already broken beyond repair. In the weeks after realizing Ethan's quiet withdrawal, Eleanor's subtle presence became an invisible yet relentless force in our lives. Each polite suggestion, carefully timed compliment, or innocent question now resonated deeper, pulling invisible strings I hadn't seen clearly until then. One Sunday afternoon, Ethan and I visited his parents' estate at Eleanor's insistence. When we arrived, she welcomed us warmly, her gracious smile masking any trace of tension as she guided us onto the veranda overlooking the tranquil lake. Maria? Ethan tells me you're being considered for another promotion, Eleanor began, elegantly stirring sugar into her tea, the spoon clinking gently against porcelain. You're certainly climbing quickly. I smiled, forcing warmth into my voice. Thank you, it's exciting. Yes, exciting indeed. She paused, casting a brief but significant glance toward Ethan. Though, I must say, ambition can sometimes come at a price, especially for relationships. Ethan sat quietly beside me, sipping his tea, his silence echoing loudly in my ears. I don't think ambition and relationships need to conflict, I replied softly but firmly, watching Ethan closely for support. He avoided my gaze, staring quietly toward the lake instead. Perhaps, Eleanor continued smoothly. Yet priorities inevitably shift. Ethan's always been the supportive type, even to his detriment. I just worry, that's all. Her carefully chosen words lingered, unspoken meanings settling heavily upon us. Ethan's continued silence left me feeling profoundly alone. Later, as we walked through Eleanor's impeccably manicured gardens, I excused myself to the guest bathroom inside the house. Returning down the hallway, I heard Eleanor's distinct, calm voice drifting quietly from the study. Instinctively, I paused near the partially open door. "You have to guide her, Ethan," she said gently but firmly, her voice low and commanding. "Maria's ambition could easily overshadow your own. Don't let her forget the balance you need. She'll understand, eventually." "I know, Mom," Ethan replied softly, sounding resigned yet accepting. She doesn't always listen. She thinks you're trying to control her." "I'm guiding, dear," Eleanor corrected, her voice tender yet authoritative. "Remember, it's your life too. A marriage cannot survive if only one person sets the pace. Eventually, something will break." My heart raced painfully as I pressed silently against the wall, realization and hurt mingling bitterly inside me. Ethan's quiet surrender stung deeply. He was willingly complicit in his mother's quiet manipulation. He knew exactly what was happening and chose compliance instead of confrontation. I stepped away from the door quietly, retreating back toward the garden. My legs felt unsteady, my breath shallow. When Ethan rejoined me a few minutes later, his expression was carefully neutral, betraying nothing of the conversation I'd overheard. That evening, back at home, the weight of unspoken tension pressed heavily upon us. Unable to hold it back any longer, I confronted him softly, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Ethan, are you truly comfortable with everything that's happening? With how your mother intervenes in our decisions?" He hesitated, irritation flickering briefly in his eyes before quickly disappearing. "Mom just wants what's best for us, Maria. You've got to stop seeing her as some villain. She's just protective." "Protective? Ethan, she's literally telling you how to manage us," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Maria, she's not trying to control us," Ethan said tiredly, turning away. "But maybe you should consider her perspective sometimes. We could both benefit from slowing down, from balancing things better." His words felt like a quiet betrayal. Eleanor's thoughts had seamlessly become his own, her words now spoken through his voice. It struck me then Eleanor had not just influenced Ethan, she had quietly reshaped him. In the days following, her presence became more overt, her suggestions harder to dismiss. She'd leave subtle messages, magazine clippings slipped into my purse about successful marriages depending on sacrifice. Friendly texts reminding me how fortunate Ethan was to have such a supportive partner who could prioritize family. One evening, another gift appeared. A beautiful journal with Eleanor's familiar handwriting on an attached note. "For your plans ahead, remember, balance is key. Love always, Eleanor." It was perfectly innocuous, yet it felt as heavy as chains around my wrists. Ethan saw only kindness in his mother's gesture, blind to the weight of expectation hidden beneath her careful script. At work, I found myself distracted, Eleanor's words echoing continuously in my mind. Her voice was becoming internalized, guiding my thoughts despite my resistance. I began doubting myself, questioning my decisions, hesitating before accepting new projects or promotions. It was during a quiet moment alone in my office, staring at Eleanor's elegant journal on my desk, that I finally recognized the extent of her power. Without raising her voice or openly confronting me, she had managed to infiltrate every corner of my life, gradually dismantling the confidence I'd built so painstakingly. As I sat there, tracing the gilded edges of the journal, I understood with painful clarity that Eleanor's gentle authority was far stronger than outright control because it operated through those closest to me, including Ethan, reshaping our marriage silently but irrevocably from within. After that revelation, every encounter with Eleanor became a silent battlefield inside me. I began to second-guess each interaction, analyzing her words repeatedly, trying to determine if they were truly kind or quietly manipulative. The line between reality and paranoia blurred, leaving me increasingly unsettled. One evening, as Ethan and I prepared for another obligatory dinner at his parents' home, anxiety coiled tightly in my chest. Standing in front of our bedroom mirror, I carefully adjusted my necklace, my fingers trembling slightly. Ethan watched from the doorway, arms crossed, observing quietly. "Do we really have to go tonight?" I asked hesitantly, unable to hide the uncertainty in my voice. He sighed deeply, frustration evident. "Maria, it's just dinner. Mom expects us. It's not a big deal." "It feels like a big deal to me," I whispered, glancing up to meet his reflection in the mirror. "You're making it complicated," Ethan said softly, his tone dismissive. "Everything will be fine if you just relax." His words echoed in my mind, sharply reinforcing my growing uncertainty. Perhaps he was right. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe Eleanor's comments were harmless, meant kindly. But beneath my rationalizations, unease persisted stubbornly. Throughout dinner that evening, Eleanor seemed effortlessly gracious, her words flawlessly pleasant, devoid of their usual subtle sting. I watched her carefully, trying to detect hidden meanings yet found none. Each gentle laugh, each warm compliment twisted my perception further. Was it possible I'd misread her intentions all along? Later, while we were seated in the living room sipping coffee, Eleanor leaned toward me, her voice filled with gentle curiosity. "Maria, how have you been managing lately? Ethan mentioned you seemed a bit tired these days." My heart quickened at her subtle intrusion. Ethan shifted uncomfortably beside me, silent as always. "I've been busy, but managing," I answered cautiously. "Busy," Eleanor echoed softly, nodding thoughtfully. "Of course, we all have our choices to make. Ethan's father and I faced similar challenges. It's so important to recognize when something becomes too much." Her gaze lingered meaningfully, and I felt my throat tighten. My mind raced. Was she truly concerned? Or was this another carefully veiled critique? Ethan remained silent, his neutral expression giving me no comfort. As we drove home later, the heaviness between us intensified. "You didn't say a word when your mother was talking," I finally said, my voice breaking slightly. "You just sat there." "Maria, what did you want me to say?" he snapped, exhaustion and frustration spilling into his voice. "Mom was just trying to help. You keep reading things into every single word she says." "Am I?" I asked, genuinely uncertain now. "Ethan, sometimes I wonder if I'm losing my mind. I can't even tell what's real anymore." He glanced toward me briefly, sighing in resignation. "Look, Maria, maybe it's stress. You're pushing yourself too hard. Perhaps Mom's right. Maybe slowing down wouldn't hurt." His casual acceptance of Eleanor's view felt like another small betrayal. My chest tightened painfully, confusion mixing with hurt. Was he right? Had I twisted innocent words into something sinister? Doubt clouded my thoughts, making me question my own judgment. Over the next few days, my internal struggle deepened. At work, colleagues noticed my distraction, gently asking if I was all right. Their genuine concern triggered further anxiety. Had Eleanor been right all along? Was my ambition hurting my marriage, distancing Ethan from me? At night, sleep became elusive. I'd lay awake, Eleanor's voice replaying continuously, her gentle accusations weaving into my thoughts like subtle poison. You must prioritize family over ambition. You're neglecting Ethan. Balance is everything. Slowly, my confidence began eroding beneath these self-inflicted doubts. Was I truly selfish for pursuing my career? Was I neglecting my marriage, unaware? One evening, unable to bear the turmoil alone, I visited my parents. Sitting in their cozy kitchen, surrounded by the comforting scent of fresh coffee and home-baked bread, I finally opened up, my voice unsteady. "Mom, Dad, am I selfish?" I asked, tears blurring my vision unexpectedly. "Am I neglecting Ethan by wanting success?" My mother placed her hand gently over mine, her calm presence grounding me. "Maria, what's really making you ask this?" Slowly, I shared my fears, the subtle pressure Eleanor exerted, Ethan's passive acceptance, and my growing uncertainty. My father listened quietly, concern evident in his eyes. "Maria," he said softly, after a thoughtful pause, "people who truly care for you encourage growth, not doubt. Remember that." His words resonated deeply. I felt something shift inside, a small but powerful realization taking hold. My parents' quiet reassurance reminded me that love supported growth, never restrained it. Returning home later that night, a new determination burned gently within me. Eleanor's power depended on my doubt, on my insecurity. I resolved to trust myself again, to reclaim control of my thoughts and decisions. Yet, as I entered our home, Ethan's silent presence brought uncertainty rushing back. He barely glanced up from his laptop, offering only a brief smile before returning to his work. The stark contrast between my parents' unconditional support and Ethan's quiet detachment pierced deeply. Standing in the doorway, watching Ethan absorbed in his own world, the internal battle flared again, stronger than before, between trusting my own instincts or continuing to dismiss my pain as paranoia. In that quiet moment, I realized clearly that the true conflict wasn't just with Eleanor or even Ethan. It was within myself, between what I wanted to believe and the harsh truth I was only just beginning to face. The weeks following my visit to my parents brought unexpected news, a brief moment of joy in an otherwise anxious period. I discovered I was pregnant. When the test confirmed it, emotions surged through me, a mixture of happiness, relief, and cautious hope. Perhaps this was exactly what Ethan and I needed to bridge the silent gap that had slowly widened between us. That evening, as Ethan returned home from work, I decided to tell him immediately. He was putting his briefcase down when I approached him quietly, a hesitant smile on my face. "Ethan, there's something important I need to tell you." He glanced up, mild curiosity in his eyes. "Everything all right?" I nodded, heart pounding gently. "I'm pregnant." A momentary silence filled the room as his expression shifted, surprise quickly replaced by genuine joy. He stepped forward and embraced me warmly, his reaction melting away my previous fears. For a moment, everything felt right again, our shared excitement rekindling a connection I'd long missed. The following days were filled with cautious optimism. Ethan's attitude noticeably softened, his gestures tender, the tense silence between us gradually easing. Yet even as I felt hopeful, a quiet anxiety lingered beneath my happiness. How would Eleanor react? We decided to share the news during our next family dinner. As we sat around the table, laughter and light conversation flowing easily, Ethan reached for my hand and smiled warmly. "We have something special to announce," he began confidently, his eyes briefly meeting mine with affection. "Maria and I are expecting a baby." The room erupted with joyful congratulations, Ethan's father enthusiastically patting him on the shoulder. Yet, as I glanced toward Eleanor, my stomach tightened slightly. Her smile was gentle and perfect, yet her eyes studied me intently, carrying a subtle, unreadable tension. "Congratulations, dear," she finally said, her voice smooth and graceful. "A baby is such a precious blessing. It changes everything." Her words sounded sincere, yet beneath them lurked an implication I struggled to ignore. She raised her glass, smiling at Ethan warmly, before glancing pointedly at me again. Here's to new beginnings and finding the right balance. Over the next few weeks, that fleeting unease grew. Ethan, initially supportive and attentive, gradually reverted to a more distant stance, his attention drifting again, preoccupied with work or conversations with his mother. My body soon began showing signs of strain. Nausea became constant, fatigue relentless, and headaches intensified. At a routine appointment, the doctor's concerned expression unsettled me. "Maria, your blood pressure is higher than normal. Your stress levels are worrying. You need to reduce your workload significantly to avoid complications." I stared at her quietly, anxiety coiling tighter within me. "How serious is it?" "Pregnancy-induced hypertension can be very serious," she warned gently. "I strongly recommend immediate lifestyle adjustments." Returning home, I hesitantly shared the news with Ethan, my voice strained and uncertain. "The doctor says my stress is affecting the pregnancy. I might need to slow down at work." He looked up, brow furrowed briefly. "How much slower are we talking?" "A lot," I admitted quietly. "Possibly even temporary leave." Ethan hesitated, visibly conflicted. "Maybe that wouldn't be such a bad idea, Maria. Mom always says you push yourself too hard anyway." His reference to Eleanor's perspective, rather than mine, hurt deeply, but I swallowed my disappointment silently, nodding quietly. The next evening, Eleanor stopped by unexpectedly, bearing herbal teas and comforting smiles. "I heard about the doctor's concerns," she began gently, sitting elegantly across from me. "Pregnancy is difficult enough without unnecessary pressures." I forced a polite smile, hiding my tension. "I'm trying to manage." "Managing isn't enough, Maria," Eleanor said softly but firmly. "Ethan deserves peace of mind, too. Perhaps it's time to step back from work completely. Motherhood is demanding, and Ethan shouldn't bear that burden alone." Her carefully chosen words felt like tiny cuts, intensifying my guilt and confusion. Ethan entered the room quietly, silently taking a seat beside her, passively agreeing through his silence. The weeks that followed grew increasingly difficult. My health worsened, forcing me to temporarily step away from my job, a choice I deeply resented, feeling trapped by circumstance and Eleanor's subtle pressure. Anxiety mounted each day, worsened by Ethan's growing detachment and Eleanor's quiet, constant presence. One afternoon, while resting alone, a sudden, sharp pain stabbed behind my eyes, blurring my vision briefly. Terrified, I struggled to dial Ethan's number. "Ethan, I need help," I stammered weakly, fear constricting my voice. "Something's wrong. I can barely see." He sounded distracted, irritated. "Maria, calm down. Just rest. It's probably stress." I listened helplessly as he quickly ended the call, leaving me alone, scared and vulnerable. Later, at the hospital, doctors confirmed my worst fears. My pregnancy complications had intensified dangerously, threatening not just my baby, but my vision and overall health. Ethan finally arrived, visibly uncomfortable, overwhelmed, and distant. "What did the doctor say?" he asked, standing near the door, unwilling or unable to approach closely. "They said I'm at high risk," I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. "I need support, Ethan. I can't do this alone." He hesitated, looking away briefly. "I'm trying, Maria, but I'm overwhelmed too. Mom was right. You're always pushing limits." His words, quiet but devastatingly clear, felt like a harsh rejection. As he stepped out to take a phone call from Eleanor, leaving me alone in the sterile hospital room, despair filled me, sharp and undeniable. In that stark moment, the initial joy of our pregnancy felt distant, overshadowed entirely by the dark reality unfolding around me. Trapped between physical pain and emotional abandonment, I recognized the painful truth clearly. For the first time, I was utterly alone in this struggle, facing a darkness deeper than I'd ever imagined. After returning from the hospital, my isolation deepened rapidly. My vision deteriorated, leaving me vulnerable, increasingly dependent on Ethan's support, which had become nearly non-existent. Each plea for help was met with irritation or silence. Eleanor's visits intensified, each seemingly helpful gesture hiding subtle criticism. "Rest more, dear," she'd gently say, implying my stress-burdened Ethan. Her constant presence deepened my loneliness, reinforcing my guilt. One afternoon, severe pain blurred my vision completely. Panicked, I called Ethan. His response was brief and irritated. "Maria, you're probably overreacting. I'm busy. It can wait." Overwhelmed and frightened, I called my parents. They immediately came, taking me to the doctor, where I learned my pregnancy complications had worsened, threatening my eyesight and health. The doctor urgently recommended reducing stress and having consistent support. That evening, desperate, I confronted Ethan. "I can't handle this alone. I'm scared, Ethan." He sighed bitterly. "I've done all I can. Your demands are exhausting. Mom was right, you always push too hard." His harsh words stunned me into silence. Ethan turned away, retreating into his office, leaving me alone in the growing darkness. Feeling utterly abandoned, I called my mother. "Mom, I can't do this anymore. I'm completely alone." "No, you're not," she replied firmly. The next day, my parents arrived quietly, packing a few of my belongings and gently guiding me away from the home I'd once cherished. As I left, Ethan didn't even notice, or perhaps didn't care. In the quiet comfort of my parents' presence, a small, fragile resolve began to form. Painful, yet undeniably real, marking the first step toward reclaiming myself from the suffocating darkness. After moving to my parents' home, Ethan's silence deepened, leaving me abandoned. Weeks passed without any communication, until one day he appeared unexpectedly, his expression cold, indifferent. "Maria, you chose this drama," he said dismissively. "I can't handle your constant crises." Shocked, I replied softly, "Ethan, I'm losing my eyesight. Our child's at risk. This isn't drama." He rolled his eyes, irritation clear. "You're exaggerating. Mom warned me you'd play victim." Soon afterward, friends whispered how Ethan publicly mocked my condition, calling it dramatic pregnancy hysteria. Painful social media photos appeared of Ethan smiling at lavish family events, carefree and happy. Then came the call that shattered me. Ethan calmly informed me, "My brother's wedding is next weekend. Mom expects me there." "Ethan, that's right before my scheduled C-section." "You promised you'd be here," I pleaded. He scoffed. "Maria, stop acting helpless. You'll be fine. My family needs me. Your parents can handle it." He hung up abruptly. Alone in the darkness, I finally saw clearly. Ethan had become a stranger, cruel, indifferent, mocking my pain, and leaving me utterly abandoned in my most vulnerable moment. Silently, I vowed he'd never have power over me again. A few days after Ethan's call, anxiety drove me to check our shared savings account. A heavy sense of dread filled me as the screen loaded, revealing the shocking truth. Our account was nearly empty. Heart racing, I frantically scanned through recent transactions. Large sums had vanished abruptly, withdrawn by Ethan just days before. Panic surged through me as I dialed his number, fingers trembling. "What happened to our savings, Ethan?" My voice shook uncontrollably. He sighed, sounding bored and dismissive. "I needed money for the wedding expenses. Mom said the family should celebrate properly. You'll manage." "Ethan, that money was for our baby, my medical expenses. How could you?" My voice broke, anger and betrayal flooding me. "You're overreacting," he snapped coldly. "Stop being selfish. It's family." His words stunned me, leaving me breathless with shock. Ethan had betrayed me profoundly, prioritizing his family's lavish demands over our child's safety and my health. As I sat alone, numb and disbelieving, the harsh truth finally settled upon me. Ethan hadn't just abandoned me emotionally, he'd deliberately stolen our future, leaving me helpless at the moment I needed him most. In that painful clarity, I recognized that the Ethan I once loved no longer existed. He had chosen his mother's manipulations and his family's superficial image over us, shattering my trust completely. As the reality of Ethan's betrayal sank in, my health rapidly deteriorated. Stress worsened my symptoms, leaving me bedridden and frightened, constantly haunted by anxiety about the upcoming birth. One evening, intense pain suddenly overtook me, sharp and relentless. Panic surged as I realized I was entering labor prematurely. Alone in my parents' guest room, I desperately tried to call Ethan, hoping his humanity would resurface in this moment of crisis. My call went straight to voicemail. Pain and fear overwhelmed me as my vision blurred again. Barely conscious, I dialed my mother's number, my voice weak and broken. Within minutes, my parents arrived, their faces filled with worry and determination. They rushed me to the hospital, voices urgent yet gentle, reassuring me I wasn't alone. At the hospital, doctors moved swiftly, voices tense as they prepared for emergency surgery. Her blood pressure's dangerously high. We need to deliver immediately to save them both. Through the haze of pain, I whispered Ethan's name, yearning for the husband I once knew. Yet even at that critical moment, Ethan remained absent, celebrating lavishly at his brother's wedding, oblivious or indifferent to the danger I faced. As anesthesia pulled me into unconsciousness, my last clear thought was painful yet freeing. Ethan had abandoned me. Yes, but my parents had not. I was not alone. I would survive for myself and for my child. When I finally opened my eyes, disoriented and exhausted, my parents were at my bedside, holding my hands gently. Their faces wore relief but also deep worry. I glanced around, confused at first, then memories returned, the fear, the pain, Ethan's betrayal. "The baby?" I whispered urgently, my heart racing. My mother smiled softly, squeezing my hand reassuringly. "He's safe, Maria. You both made it." Relief washed through me, tears streaming down my face silently. The realization was profound against all odds. We had survived. My parents never left my side, quietly ensuring I was never alone during the harrowing days that followed. Ethan appeared only briefly, days later. His presence felt hollow, an obligation rather than genuine concern. Standing by the doorway, he avoided eye contact, awkwardly shifting. "How are you?" he asked stiffly, devoid of warmth. I studied him quietly, finally seeing him clearly, no longer blinded by illusions. "We're fine, Ethan. No thanks to you." He hesitated, surprised by my quiet defiance, before muttering an excuse and quickly leaving. Watching him disappear, I felt a quiet strength begin to grow within me. My parents' unwavering support anchored me, teaching me the true meaning of family, loyalty, and love. Ethan's absence no longer left me hollow, it fueled my resolve. I had survived without him, and from now on, I knew clearly I didn't need him. As I held my newborn son close, feeling his gentle breath against my skin, I silently promised him and myself that Ethan's betrayal would never define us. Instead, we would forge our own path, guided by genuine love and strength drawn from those who truly stood by us. In the quiet weeks following my son's birth, clarity slowly replaced my previous confusion. Each day strengthened my resolve, and Ethan's absence reinforced the painful yet empowering truth our marriage was over, broken beyond repair. My decision crystallized during a quiet evening at my parents' home. I sat holding my sleeping son, his peaceful expression reassuring me of my path forward. I knew what I needed to do for both our sakes. The next morning, I quietly met with a lawyer, calmly outlining my decision. My voice was steady, my heart oddly peaceful as I said the words clearly. I want a divorce. That evening, Ethan arrived unexpectedly after learning about my decision, his face pale, disbelief clear. "Maria, you can't be serious," he said, voice shaking slightly. "You're making a huge mistake." I met his gaze calmly, unwavering. "The only mistake was believing you would stand beside me. I can't continue a life built on lies." He struggled to respond. briefly looking away before attempting to plead his case once more. Think about our son. He needs a family. Yes, I answered firmly. A real family. One built on love and respect. Something you and your mother couldn't offer. Defeated, Ethan left quietly, finally realizing there was nothing left to salvage. Closing the door behind him felt symbolic. An end, but also a powerful new beginning. Standing alone in the silent hallway, I felt lighter, stronger. The chains of emotional manipulation and betrayal had fallen away. With quiet determination, I took the first real step toward reclaiming myself and my life, free from Ethan's shadow. In the weeks following my decision to divorce Ethan, I began the slow process of healing, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally. Each day at my parents' quiet, comforting home brought small but steady progress. My vision gradually stabilized, and the debilitating headaches eased. Yet the deepest healing was happening within. My parents quietly created a safe space for me to recover. Gentle conversations over morning coffee, quiet evenings spent reading, or simply sitting together in comforting silence, they gave me room to breathe, to reflect, and to grieve. At first, memories of Ethan and Eleanor's manipulations haunted me. Doubts lingered, resurfacing unexpectedly, bringing waves of sadness. But gradually, those painful memories began to lose their hold, replaced by the clarity of self-awareness and acceptance. One afternoon, sitting quietly on the porch, my mother joined me, placing a gentle hand on mine. "You're stronger than you realize," she said softly, her eyes full of quiet wisdom. "Healing isn't about forgetting. It's about understanding yourself better, choosing to grow despite the pain." Her words resonated deeply. Instead of suppressing the hurt, I allowed myself to fully feel it, to acknowledge it, and then let it slowly pass. Each moment of reflection was painful but liberating, teaching me valuable lessons about self-worth, boundaries, and resilience. Slowly, I rebuilt routines, rediscovered interests I'd long neglected, and most importantly, nurtured a deep bond with my son. Holding him, caring for him, I found renewed purpose. His innocence and trust reminded me daily of the genuine love and strength that surrounded us. In those quiet weeks of recovery, I learned an essential truth. Healing was not about returning to who I had once been, but evolving into someone stronger, wiser, and free from the shadows of my past. As weeks turned into months, my healing evolved into a journey of rediscovery. Freed from Ethan and Eleanor's shadow, I began the empowering process of reclaiming my identity, reconnecting with the strength and ambitions I'd buried beneath their manipulations. One afternoon, while sorting through old belongings, I stumbled across an award from my early career days. Holding it in my hands brought a quiet realization. I'd once defined myself by genuine passion, achievement, and self-respect. Somewhere along the way, I'd lost sight of that truth. Determined to reconnect with my former self, I started small. I began journaling again, reclaiming my thoughts and feelings as my own. Simple affirmations filled the pages. I am enough. I am resilient. My value is not defined by anyone else. Gradually, confidence began replacing insecurity. Encouraged by my parents, I reconnected with old colleagues who warmly welcomed my return, reminding me of the capable, driven woman I'd always been. In rediscovering my professional passion, I also deepened my bond with my son, finding profound strength in motherhood. Watching him grow, thrive, and explore the world with innocent wonder inspired me daily, reinforcing my sense of purpose. One evening, sitting quietly with my father, he softly remarked, "You know, Maria, true strength is knowing your worth, even when others don't." His words resonated deeply. I'd spent years letting Ethan and Eleanor diminish my value, but now I reclaimed it, fully embracing my own worth and dignity. My past no longer defined me. Instead, it became the foundation for my renewed strength and self-awareness. In that quiet, transformative period, I finally understood my true value wasn't something that could be taken. It had always been mine, waiting patiently for me to reclaim it. With each passing day, I grew stronger and more confident. My return to work marked a significant turning point, one filled with excitement, purpose, and a renewed sense of independence. On my first morning back, I stepped into my office, greeted warmly by colleagues whose smiles felt genuinely supportive. Sitting at my familiar desk, I felt both nostalgic and empowered. I was finally reclaiming a vital part of my identity, the ambitious, capable woman who once fearlessly pursued her dreams. Challenges quickly surfaced, testing my resilience. But instead of doubt, I embraced them eagerly, proving to myself and others that my talents had only grown stronger through adversity. Slowly, my reputation flourished again, earning me respect and recognition in my industry. Evenings were spent quietly bonding with my son, watching him grow healthier and happier each day. My parents' continued support created the perfect balance, allowing me to rebuild my career without sacrificing motherhood. One afternoon, after successfully leading a crucial project, I received news of a promotion. My manager smiled warmly as he handed me the official letter. "Welcome back, Maria. You've proven your strength and value," he said sincerely. His words resonated deeply. Returning home that night, I stood quietly outside, breathing deeply, savoring this new beginning. For the first time in years, I felt completely free, independent, and empowered, no longer defined by Ethan's betrayal or Eleanor's manipulations. In that moment, I understood clearly. My painful past had not weakened me. It had forged me into someone stronger, wiser, and more resilient than I'd ever imagined possible. Time moved steadily forward, and life finally felt peaceful. Then, one quiet afternoon at work, a news alert flashed across my phone, making my heart skip briefly. Local family implicated in massive financial fraud. My pulse quickened as I recognized Ethan's family name prominently displayed. With trembling fingers, I read through the article, details unfolding vividly. Ethan, Eleanor, and other family members were being investigated for extensive embezzlement and fraud, their luxurious lifestyle collapsing publicly and spectacularly. Days later, social media erupted with the scandal. Photos of their lavish parties, extravagant vacations, and opulent homes were juxtaposed starkly against the reality of their downfall. Public outrage quickly replaced admiration, their carefully cultivated image shattering instantly. My phone rang repeatedly, calls and messages from friends and colleagues expressing disbelief, shock, or even curiosity. Yet I felt no joy or vindication, just quiet sadness and a calm sense of justice. One evening, watching the news coverage quietly at home, I realized something profoundly liberating. Ethan and Eleanor's facade was finally stripped bare, revealing their true selves to the world. The betrayal I had suffered now stood plainly visible, validated by reality itself. Their collapse, though dramatic, felt like a distant echo of a past life. I had moved beyond their reach, rebuilding myself and thriving without their shadows looming over me. One rainy afternoon, while I was quietly preparing dinner, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. Opening the door, I froze. Ethan stood there, visibly humbled and worn, his once confident demeanor completely shattered. "Maria," he began hesitantly, unable to meet my gaze directly. "Can we talk?" Reluctantly, I stepped aside, allowing him entry. He entered slowly, glancing around uncertainly, clearly uncomfortable in the calm simplicity of my home. We sat at the kitchen table, the silence heavy between us. "What do you need, Ethan?" My voice remained neutral, calm yet firm. He hesitated, visibly embarrassed. "We need your help, Maria. The scandal destroyed everything. Mom's devastated. We're desperate." Listening quietly, I felt no anger or bitterness, only a gentle sadness for the pathetic situation Ethan now faced. Why come to me? I asked softly, genuinely curious. He looked down, shame evident. You were always the strong one, the smart one. If anyone can fix this, it's you. His admission filled the room with quiet irony. Ethan, who had belittled my strength, now stood desperately seeking it. Ethan, I responded gently but clearly, I can't fix this for you. You chose your path, and I chose mine. I won't allow myself to be pulled back into your chaos. He nodded slowly, realizing my decision was final. Standing to leave, his posture slumped, utterly defeated. As the door quietly closed behind him, I felt calm clarity rather than regret. Ethan's visit confirmed my strength, no longer tethered by guilt, manipulation, or past ties. I had truly moved forward, free from the shadows of those who once held power over me. Days later, Eleanor appeared unexpectedly at my door, a shadow of the confident, polished woman I'd once known. Her elegance diminished, replaced by quiet desperation. Maria, please, she pleaded softly, her voice thin and uncertain. Let me explain. Calmly, I invited her in, maintaining quiet dignity as she settled across from me. The woman who'd once wielded subtle, destructive power over my life now seemed fragile, vulnerable, her authority completely stripped away. I know we treated you badly, Eleanor admitted, her eyes lowered in genuine shame. I manipulated Ethan, thinking I knew best. I was wrong, Maria. I listened quietly, absorbing the reality of this long-awaited apology. Yet my heart felt neither triumph nor bitterness, only quiet strength, a sense of compassionate detachment. Eleanor, I began gently, carefully choosing each word. I've long forgiven what happened, not for your sake, but mine. But forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the past. She nodded slowly, her expression one of quiet resignation. We need your strength, Maria. Without you, Ethan's lost. Our family's ruined. I met her pleading gaze calmly, my voice gentle yet firm. You created your own ruin. My strength now belongs solely to myself and my child. I won't sacrifice our peace to rebuild yours. Eleanor's shoulders slumped, finally understanding my resolve. As she quietly stood to leave, she paused, turning back momentarily. You truly are strong, Maria, she whispered sadly. Stronger than I ever imagined. Her words lingered softly, reinforcing what I'd already embraced. Strength born from adversity, dignity rooted in self-respect. As Eleanor quietly departed, I felt a profound inner peace, knowing clearly and completely I had reclaimed my life fully. After Eleanor's departure, quiet peace fully returned to my life. Days flowed gently, marked by meaningful work, joyful moments with my son, and evenings filled with comforting simplicity alongside my parents. One afternoon, as warm sunlight filled my office, I paused, reflecting quietly on the journey behind me. My gaze fell on a photo of my son smiling brightly, his innocence untouched by past shadows. This image symbolized everything I'd fought for: genuine love, quiet strength, and real happiness. Returning home that evening, the gentle sounds of my parents softly chatting filled the kitchen. As I entered, they turned toward me, smiles welcoming and reassuring. You look happy, my father remarked gently, observing me closely. I am, I replied softly, meaning every word. My mother smiled warmly, her eyes shining with quiet pride. You deserve every bit of it, Maria. Later, as twilight deepened outside, I sat quietly on the porch, feeling profound gratitude for my life now simple yet rich with authenticity. The scars from Ethan and Eleanor had faded into wisdom, resilience, and a quiet, lasting strength. In that gentle, peaceful moment, I knew clearly that true happiness wasn't built on perfection, but found within quiet moments of genuine connection, self-respect, and unconditional love. Finally, I had fully reclaimed my peace, free to live authentically in the soft, unwavering glow of a life truly my own.